Even before I released my The Problem with the Pokemon Black and White remake, I wanted to make this a two-part series with a second part discussing the rumored legends, Celebi, or whatever they'll choose to call it. However, I feel like there's considerably less problems with this game than a Black and White remake. Bear with me regardless, because there's definitely some things that I think could be fixed. Pokemon Legends Arceus, in my opinion, was a fun game, and it set out to do something completely different, which I believe it succeeded in doing. While I personally haven't gotten too tired of it, I know a large part of the fan base needed a change from the usual going to the gym and fighting the Elite Four formula. But even someone like me who enjoys the older formula could appreciate the breath of fresh air that was Pokemon Legends Arceus. On top of all that, because Sinnoh is my favorite region, it allowed me to really get into this, enjoy the prehistoric version of it. The concept of Pokemon time travel is amazing, and it really opens up the gate for limitless Pokemon adventures. The main gameplay focus of catching Pokemon who are constantly roaming around honestly was pretty fun to me. I like the addition of Alpha Pokemon to mix it up, both in terms of making a harder Pokemon to catch and all the crouching and running around and dodging that you were kind of forced to do. With all that being said, there were definitely some things in the game that I'd like to see improve. Quick disclaimer before getting into these though, some of these may just be due to the limitations of the Nintendo Switch, but I still feel like they're problems and they exist, right? So I think they're still worth mentioning. Firstly, a lot of the Pokemon are kind of just wandering around and waiting for you to catch them. That's just not how animals behave in the wild, and it just doesn't really make sense and can be immersion breaking. Of course, there are some Pokemon that behave differently and have animations, but I'd love to see more detailed animations of Pokemon interacting with each other and the environment, and of course, a bigger quantity of these animations. Speaking of the environment, I'd love to see more specific landmarks and memorable things in the land. For example, maybe a certain part of the forest or the tree area, because I don't think it technically counts in the forest. But whatever. Anyway, let's say it has a different type of tree where only a certain Pokemon can be found, or maybe like special flowers in that area that look really nice. Or let's say that one of these areas has a door or a pathway that takes you to another hidden area. That would be amazing. These may not be the best examples, but you get what I'm trying to say here. Thirdly, I hated the way that battles worked. The whole strong style and agile style concept was actually pretty interesting in my opinion, but I thought that strong style was a little OP and it just needed a bit of balancing. I've also seen reviews of the game where they say the styles are useless and they don't do anything. So either way, there's a big balancing problem there in my opinion. I also don't like that there's no Pokemon abilities. It was a fun addition in my opinion to the battle system and it added a level of challenge and depth. Lastly, I wish there was way more variety in the missions and side quests. Bringing someone a certain Pokemon or item can be interesting if done in moderation, but I love more side quests like maybe you run into someone in the wild who's getting swarmed by wild Pokemon and your job is to go help them. Or maybe you run into someone who wants to see your Pokemon. If your Pokemon can outswim his Pokemon or outfly his Pokemon or even outrun his Pokemon, there's so many things that could theoretically happen and it would be really cool to just be out there and run into some unique people and unique side quests. Which, don't get me wrong, there is some uniqueness there, but I just think it possibly could be expanded on, you know? This is a time travel game after all. There's literally infinite possibilities and things you could do. When we think of time travel, which Pokemon comes to mind? I definitely say Pokemon Celebi, right? And quite fittingly so, because if Celebi is known for time travel and the Sinnoh and Johto regions are connected in a special way, Pokemon Legends Celebi or Legends Johto, whatever you want to call it, has to be the next logical choice for a Legends game, or at least in my opinion. I know some people are going to say Legends Kyurem or whatever, but I think they may go in the way of Johto. So, with that in mind, there are definitely some things that I'd like to see in the game. Firstly, I think we can agree that this game definitely needs some visually appealing. It needs to be more visually appealing than the last one. The graphics were just not as great as they could have been, in my opinion, and there was just the color scheme was very dark and it had a lot of dull colors. Maybe that was a stylistic choice, and maybe it was because of the Switch's limitations, or maybe both. But if rumors are to be believed, the Switch 2 may be on the way soon, or whatever Nintendo will call their next console. And if that's the case, a new Johto Legends game on a new, more powerful console could bring us a much cleaner looking game with much more vibrant colors that would just be amazing. Secondly, I'd love the developers to take a page out of the Pokemon Snap series when developing animations out in the world. Now, obviously, the Pokemon Snap series is really, really small in terms of an open world Pokemon game, right? So stretching those types of animations to that large of a scale is very difficult. But they could definitely add at least a little bit more, more interesting and unique animations that really make the world feel truly lived in. And like these Pokemon things are just alive instead of just zombies walking around, waiting to be caught. Maybe two different Pokemon could be going at it in the wild, fighting back and forth. Maybe two different Pokemon are working together to get fruit out of a tree. The animations are only limited by imagination, and they'd add a lot to the pre existing animations from Legends, which honestly, to some degree, could probably be recycled a bit. Um, and they'd honestly make the world feel a lot more alive, in my opinion. So, thirdly, I'd love for Game Freak to focus a bit more on the battling. There doesn't have to be gyms or anything. I actually like the direction that they took with this game not having, gyms. It gives it its own identity, in my opinion. But I really would like, Pokemon abilities and double battles, or at least the ability to use more than one Pokemon against multiple Pokemon. Using multiple Pokemon might make the game a little easier since, fighting multiple Pokemon at once was part of the difficulty. But basically what I'm looking for is a variety in battles. So even if they don't do that, they could figure out a new way to run battles, or they could just design the next game's difficulty with these things in mind, right? I'd also love to see breeding come into play. Breeding and baby Pokemon were first introduced in Johto, so it only makes sense that Legends Celebi would be the first Legends game to include it. And speaking of Pokemon, I want as many new regional forms and as many new Pokemon as possible. It was super fun to see the ancestors of modern Pokemon, and it would really make the game interesting, especially if you could trade between the two Legends games. Lastly, I would love to see a proper online mode. One where you can go online and there's a bunch of Pokemon all over in areas, and you get to compete to catch certain Pokemon and complete certain missions and tasks, and there could be just so much there, Kind of like I don't want to say a GTA Online, but with Pokemon, but in terms of like the variety of missions, that's kind of what I'm thinking, right? Just updating the online with a couple new activities every month would do so much for the longevity of the game. I really enjoyed Pokemon Legends Arceus for all it had, but there definitely were some things that I like improved going into the rumored Pokemon Legends Celebi. What do you guys think about the game? And what would you guys like to see improved? Let me know in the comments below. If you guys made it this far, thank you for listening to an idiot rant. If you like my work, please check out these videos. This is Plot Armor Games signing out for the day. Thank you for your time, and we will see you in the next video.